Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Healthcare Tech Insight Show. I'm super excited today to have Phil McSweeney with us. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Nadia. Pleased
How
to
are
be
you?
here.
I'm super excited to have you here with us, and so are people. I announced this morning, and I already had a few questions submitted. So people are really eager to get into the mind of an angel investor and
That'll be
see their
good.
perspective.
Yes, I
Exactly.
hope my mind will hold up.
I'm sure it will. So, before we get started, we'd love to know where the audience is connecting from. It's always exciting to see which part of the world they are connecting with us. You can put in the chat or in the comments whether you're connecting with us live or if you're watching the show on the recorded session and which part of the world you're connecting from. Let's see a few comments before we get started. We have Tara here. Hi, Tara. How are you? And
Hi,
she's
Tara.
connect.
I
She's
know
connected.
Tara, so hi, Tara.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us live. And for the audience, Phil is a seasoned angel investor who have many startup companies with their investment strategies, how to grow, how to raise money. He's also the author of an awesome book called AngelThink. I thoroughly enjoyed reading that book and I found it very precise. And it has 150 golden nuggets that you can go to at any point during your entrepreneurial journey. So, Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nadia. And the message at the bottom says, you're in the show. So that's great. I feel like I'm part of the circus today. So good.
You're awesome. So we have Zia Omersman, and he's here from joining us from London. We also have Carla Garcia from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with us live. Welcome, Carla. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section and we go through them as we go. First, Phil, for the new entrepreneurs here, when we talk investment, a lot of people go straight to venture capital.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on what is the difference between an angel investor and a venture capitalist?
Okay. An angel investor is most likely 99% of the time the person who is going to fund you first. If you're a pre-seed or possibly seed founder, looking for your first level of investment because you've either got a good idea, a couple of people around you as a team, you might have a bit of traction, you might have a bit of revenue, but you're nowhere near big enough, scaling enough, generating enough revenue, haven't proved that, how big this business could be to attract a VC's in attention and a VC's investment. So VCs might get interested in you at a fairly early stage, but usually it's because they want to track you rather than invest in you. They want to know about your metrics and, over a period of time, they might keep in touch with some key metrics, that your company is generating, sales, revenue, etc. But they're very unlikely, unless you meet certain criteria to invest in you. And those criteria might be things like you're an exited founder from a multi-million pound company already. You're Sam Altman's apprentice. You've got Gates as an advisor working for you. Those might be the kind of things that attract VC interest. But as I say, 99% of the time, you're going to be looking for angel interest. And VCs look for angels to get invested first because angels take some of the risk off the table.
Yeah.
VCs come along afterwards when half the possible companies that a VC might be interested in have already failed. So
Yeah. So they, in a way, they de-risk those investments before you get to that VC stage. And talking about stages, if you take us through like the journey, let's say somebody has an idea and then they show some proof of concept. What are the different stages of investment from starting from like the very starting point of the idea stage?
yeah. I would say that the world of investment has toughened up a lot, in the last 12, 18 months. Go back 18 months, 2 years, money was easy to get, interest rates were negligible. People were throwing around money because it was easy to borrow, etc. So at that time, you possibly could get investment for an idea without any traction, without any revenue. That's got much harder. Of course, there are, some businesses which will take many years of investment to generate revenue, deep tech, medical research, drugs, etc. But so you take a SaaS business or a B2C type business. These days, investors are looking for an early indication of some traction. Not massive, but 10K monthly recurring revenue, for example. Just some proof that there are going to be customers out there to buy it. So that pre-seed stage, if you like, is you might have a valuation of maybe a million and a half, couple of million, and I'm conscious of the fact that US valuations are generally higher than UK valuations, but in the low millions you have a valuation, and you have a proposition, a value proposition, and so you might get money at that stage. Then there is a kind of seed stage, which says you're beginning to show some good traction. Probably nobody would agree you've got proof of concept necessarily, but you've gone through some kind of research processes to prove that people want to buy what you've got. And what you're trying to do is to attract money, really, to kind of get it out to a wider market of people. And valuations then might be plus or minus 10 million, something like that. You might be trying to raise $1 million to 2 million. And then you move on to Series A, which is, you're kind of going up another level. People are beginning to get confident that you've got that you've got product market fit. There's some acceleration in your sales. You might be looking for 3-4 million to get to another stage. So essentially, pre-seed, seed, Series A, and when you get to Series A, you might get into the kind of VC area of interest, alongside maybe continued angels, maybe family offices, VCs. And then, when you're Series B, C, and you need multi-million pound rounds, then that's usually when the angels get left behind, VCs take over.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Let's say, because we're talking angel investment, what do you look for when you are, screening founders or potential startups to invest in?
Yeah. It's always a challenge, and I think you tend to get approached in two ways, or find out about proposals in two ways. One is cold outreach. You get sent a pitch, you've never met the founder, and you have to make a judgment about whether you want to go any further just from 2 or 3 minutes of looking at what they've got to say about the business idea primarily, and maybe a bit about themselves. Or, if you're a member of an angel group or a syndicate or whatever, then you go along to meetings and you get performed to by founders that want to talk about their business idea, and effectively perform a pitch deck rather than you just be given it to read. And then so the decision I think that investors need to come to is about both the idea and the founder themselves. And if you start with the idea, then there are things like to what extent have they done their best to prove that there is a market there? Have they got beyond the kind of desk Tam Sam Som kind of analysis, really gone out and tried to find customers, spoke to customers, got pre-orders, got letters of intent, got interest from people who are saying, you build this and I will buy it, and then on the kind of person side, if you're watching someone perform, as it were, their pitch, I talk about a split screen kind of approach, which is, on the one hand, you're looking, go this way, you're looking over there, at what's on the PowerPoint presentation about their value proposition, all the things you put in a pitch deck, and particularly the hockey stick, right? The hockey stick kind of graph that says, in 5 years' time, we're going to start here, but we'll be up there somewhere. And then the other thing you're trying to do is make a judgment about whether this person that's telling me this is the person that's capable of delivering it. Can I get confidence in this person that they are the person that could make it happen, that they've got belief, confidence, courage, grit, and you form a first impression about that, and then based on that kind of first impression, you just then have to say, I want to meet them again, or if you've just had the deck through an email, then it depends where they are in the world, but you say, let's have a couple of calls, or if you're in the same part of the world, let's try and meet, because I want to see the whites of your eyes, basically.
And in terms of, so it seems that you're evaluating both the founder or the team and the potential for that startup. Is there a mix? Is it a 50-50 in terms of evaluating both, or it depends, as the lawyers say?
I talked to lots of VCs, other angels, and I think in my own experience, they tend to veer towards the person rather than the idea. I've heard people say it's 60-40. I've heard people say it's 80-20. I would say that there are one or two people that I've invested in as founders that, assuming they'd got out of that business and they came to me and said, Phil, I've got a new business idea. Can I tell you about it? And would you be interested in investing in me? There are one or two people of whom I could say, I'm 80% in already because I know you, before I even know what the idea is.
So that, like, building the relationships, that's where, like, building the relationships with investors is important. Maybe it's a no for now, but it doesn't mean it's a no forever. So how do the founders start building and nurturing those investor relationships?
Well, I think there are some things they can do and some things I'm not mad keen about. So I'm not mad keen on cold outreach, for example, or I'm not mad keen on cold outreach that doesn't make any attempt to do any personalization whatsoever. And you know what it's doing, that kind of cold outreach, is a kind of mail merge operation that says, you know, here's a list of 100 or 1,000 angel investors, you know, here's the text I want to send them. I might personalize it to the extent that I'll put their name in it, and that's about it. But it's not difficult if you're willing to take time to do a bit more than that. You know, you can look at their LinkedIn profile. You can find out things about them that might trigger their interest. You know, even if you're able to say, you know, I see you have a particular interest in whatever. I see you've written a paper on. I see you work at such and such place. I see you're connected to a mutual connection. To do some of those things that just warm or begin to create some attempt at rapport in that initial outreach. Then I think you have to make a decision about whether you say, I'm working on X, you know, I'd love to talk to you about it. I'd love to ask you more about it. I'd love, you know, I know you're involved in this area. I'd welcome your opinion.
Yep.
So that's kind of one approach. Or you can say, here's my pitch deck, you know, I'm interested in your investment. And I think the problem sometimes with the latter is that what you've done inadvertently sometimes is to say to an experienced person in your sector, I'm not interested in your opinion because I've already told you what the business is.
Yeah, that takes me to the next question. What are some mistakes that are common mistakes that you've seen that founders make when approaching angel investors?
You know, there are some ways in which you can present yourself which are not helpful. A level of arrogance, a level of entitlement, neediness, you know, almost begging, you know, these kind of things. That they're your problems, but they're not my problems. So please don't try and labor me with your problems.
I see. That brings me to my next follow-up question. So what is, you mentioned the neediness. So maybe if you're closer to running out of money or need to raise more, when would be a good time for founders to start building relationship, to start raising before they need the money?
I often find, for your first raise, I often find founders have this problem with impatience. They've got a great idea, and it's partly explains the reason why many people do cold outreach, because they think it's going to be quick and they'll get, you know, $250,000 in the bank and then they can get on with building their business, and they don't want to invest time in relationship building. They just treat relationships with investors as transactional. And you know what, an investor doesn't want a founder to be their new best mate necessarily, but they want to get to a point where they can feel that the founder is willing to engage in a partnership with them, a partnership that is going to last a long time, 10 years maybe. You know.
I see. So it's not a transactional endeavor. It's more like do it with the longer term in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chances are they're going to be on your books for quite a while.
They'll be on your cap table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There'll be the people saying, you haven't sent me an investment update for 9 months, tell me what's going on.
Yeah. And in
There'll be
terms
the
of,
people that have got good ideas, 2-3 years down the line that say, I'm loving being part of your journey, but I've had this idea. Are you interested? And if you don't do that, then they just won't bother.
I see. So it's a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
It's not just about the money. It's more than that. So in terms
Yeah.
of, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, there's a spectrum of people that are angels, from at one end, completely passive investors that are quite happy to give you an amount of money and have no great expectations of you. And at the other end, there's very active investors, got a lot of experience in your sector, a lot of experience about growing businesses, scaling, exiting, etc. And if you only want passive investors, you're very unlikely to get them, because a lot of angels want to bring their world of wisdom, experience, insights to bear on what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Now, some of those can be a bit overbearing, and you have to kind of learn to say, manage them at a certain distance. But some of them have got really great ideas, connections, people they can put you in touch with, customers they can introduce. But why wouldn't you have those? Why wouldn't you work with those people? They're like unpaid staff, really.
Yeah. And is it typical for angel investors to be more, you mentioned that they bring more than the money, to be advisors or to have some sort of roles within the startup?
I wouldn't say it was typical for them to become advisors in the sense that they, are on a board or in an advisory group. But it is quite typical that they become informal advisors that you can, maybe once every 2 or 3 months. I have quite a lot of founders that say, can we have a chat? I'd like to pick your brains about X,
I see. And let's switch roles a little bit. Do you have any advice? What would be something that the founders need to be looking for when they are looking for angel investors?
Yeah.
What are the do's and don'ts? What are the green, the orange, and the red flags they should be looking for?
Yeah. Well, I think the kind of red flag advisors that you probably ought to be careful with are, so first thought is, what I sometimes refer to as the trophy board, that founders, in the hope that it will increase their chances of getting investment, build a trophy board of people that are very well known in a particular sector, but actually in reality do absolutely nothing to help you solve your problems, grow, scale your business, have no particular interest in how your business is doing, but they may have said, yeah, I'll be on your board, and it would be good if you could put me on your cap table by giving me 1 or 2% equity in your company. But kind of don't expect any more of me, because this is the deal, if you like.
That make me think of Theranos, that biotech company that claimed to be able to do a lot of blood tests from a very, very small amount of blood. And one of the red flags was on their board, they had really big names, but it
Yeah.
wasn't relevant to the business.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
one red flag.
Well, and I think related to that is if you find that some of these people are on 15 or 20 boards,
Mhm.
all doing the same kind of I suppose relative lack of involvement with every single one, because you just can't do all of that, as well as sometimes be doing a day job as well.
Yeah.
That would be a red flag too. I'm involved with 6 or 7 companies, but I take the view that and I'm retired in a sense, so this is what I do all the time. I don't have a day job, so I can manage that kind of level of involvement with half a dozen, 7 or 8, founders. But any more than that, I couldn't give them value, basically. So I think that is a question which is, to put to potential advisors, how do you see you're going to give me value?
Yeah. So make sure that they're giving you value if they are on your
Yes.
table, not
Yeah.
just a trophy type of
Yes.
involvement. That's a great point. So let's say you got that first initial, you passed that first date per se,
Yeah.
and you're on to the next one. That's when you need to find out more about the business. What are typical uh, pitch or story line that you look for uh, within that second date with the founders?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm obviously, well, I say obviously, I am looking, and it may be obvious. I will be looking for what their vision is,
Mm-hmm.
for how big they think this opportunity is going to become, what it is they're going to change
Yep.
for people or their customer set in the
Yep.
world, and why they think that. Why they think that opportunity would be so important for customers. And it's often the case that people have an idea that customers would need X, whatever it is, that their value proposition. But so many customers, potential customers, already have something that's a bit like X, and it might not do everything that X does.
Yeah.
And if they haven't worked out what it is that's going to make people switch from what they've got
Mm-hmm.
to what they're offering, because their worst, often a founder's worst enemy is apathy, customer apathy. They might like what they've got, but actually it's too much hassle
For them, the switching cost,
for them
not
to
just
switch. Yeah.
yeah.
Or it's too much hassle for them to change their habits or their behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Even when there's no cost involved. If you take mental health apps, for example,
Mm-hmm.
there's 101, probably more, different people out there thinking that the world needs mental health apps,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a billion people in the world with a mental health problem.
Mm-hmm.
How apathetic are most of the customers to actually change from
Yeah.
their current lifestyle to doing something about health, well-being. So despite you being able to point to, a vast amount of need doesn't actually mean that people will change their
Option.
behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a big problem, especially in in sectors that are already so busy. If we take, for instance, healthcare,
Yeah.
even if it's bringing a lot of, added value, but
Mm.
when you factor in that people are busy, it's going to cost them to change their habits. They're
Yeah.
not willing. A surgeon would not even be willing to change what kind of stitch if they trained on one type of stitch to switch to another one that's even better.
Yeah.
It may
Yeah.
change the way they even knot that stitch within the human body. So that's a great point. We have a question here. Let's see if we have some questions from the audience. Um, Zia or Rahman has a passive AI without limited or no experience of the business model, but based on trust and previous connections, want to invest with a reasonable financial capital, but want to be constantly part of the process. Journey that might be time consuming for a busy founder. My personal experience led to a decline of the offer. So, can you comment on how much involvement versus, giving space for the founder with the angels
Yeah.
need to be?
I can see that there is a risk with some advisors that have got a great deal of experience in your sector, thinking they know best, thinking they could run the business better than you, better
Yep.
than you could.
Mhm.
And they may have come from being chief executives or of other similar kinds of businesses. The problem, I guess, at the beginning is you're not necessarily going to know that that's what they're going to be like, and you take their money and you take them onto your cap table, and then you find out that they're a bit more intrusive than you bargained for.
Yeah.
And then it's about managing, how you manage that relationship with them,
Mhm.
which is to say, shape their expectations, say, John, whatever his or her name is, I'm quite happy to have a chat with you once every couple of months, but I've got to get on and run this business. So I can't spare more time with you than say an hour every couple of months or so.
I see. So managing expectations and having clear, you know, um,
Yeah.
communication. So what to expect and what to not to expect. We
Yes.
had another question that was submitted ahead of time. So here it goes. So for early startups in the pre-beta stage and an MV POC, minimal viable point of care, that is for investors. What is your approach for funding startups at this stage as an angel investor, and how do you assess their valuation and lack of traction as it is being developed?
Yeah. I find that difficult, and I'm not the best person to go to speak about different valuation methods.
Mm.
And it's particularly difficult if you're pre-seed, pre-revenue. It's as much art as science. It's a bit of that. But you've got to make a judgment about what it is they could bring to the sector that they're in. And I think particularly make a judgment about what the competition is, because in most cases that business in that sector has got to displace the competition.
Yeah.
And if there are, I'll give you a particular example. I work with a company that develops electronic medical records, for example. The
Mhm.
company's been around for 11 years. It's a company that's absolutely dominated by some big players, Epic, Cerner,
Mhm. Design.
ones that you know
Yeah.
well, the US-based companies.
Yep.
It's almost impossible to get above, where they are or anywhere close to where they are,
Mhm.
because they will win all the big contracts every time.
And they have a moat around their business
Yeah,
to
yeah,
prevent others from
yeah.
entering and taking
Um,
the share.
so you've got to make a judgment about what business they could possibly get.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's probably not going to be in the mainstream markets that they're in as competitors. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be overseas, small islands, charities,
Yeah.
private clinics, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be many years of just building up those small contracts
Mm-hmm.
before you can become a competitor.
I see. Awesome. We have another question that was submitted ahead of time. Here it goes. How can a woman founder without a male co-founder in the early stages that can get through the gender bias in funding and be strategic, positive, and determined in addressing that gap
Yeah.
and succeeding?
Yeah, that's a kind of $1 million question, isn't
It
it,
is.
for female
Mhm.
founders? And of all the founders that I've worked with over the years, it's only in the last few months
Mhm.
that I've invested in and got involved with a company that's co-founded by two female founders, no male co-founders, no male on in sight or on the board, and so on. And they're telling me the kinds of problems that that and it wasn't that I was ignorant of the kinds of problems that they have, but they're telling me firsthand, the kind of problems they have when they go to pitch and they go to talk to investors. And I'm actually writing a post about this at the moment. I think it might come out tomorrow.
Mhm.
But I was reading something about frame control, for example,
Mhm.
being able to address the power dynamic that exists when you, as a woman, are addressing a group of male investors,
Mhm.
um, or you, as an underrepresentative, you know,
Mhm.
member of society in a white male dominated privileged kind of environment.
Mhm.
And I think there are some real challenges there, and I think that you have to be able to say, only I can do this for this group of people, because with my experience,
Mhm.
insight, as a woman, as a black person, as someone who's LGBTQI,
Mhm.
only I understand what these people need, rather than you assuming that you understand because you're not there and I am. You haven't been there and I have.
Mhm.
So you're kind of challenging that power dynamic by saying, if you're interested in what this business is about,
Mhm.
then it has to be me
To solve that problem.
that delivers it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was an interesting study to add to your insights here. They took 200, it was an HBR, Harvard Business Review paper. They took 250 startups
Yeah,
and their pitches, and they looked for what type of questions were these founders, irrespective of their gender, were getting, and then they stratified them by, mapped it back to the gender, and they found, irrespective of what group these angels or VCs are from, there were more hindering questions towards female founders than as compared to potential questions for male founders. So
yeah,
understanding those data and learn how to reframe or re-anchor with the possibilities
yes,
rather than the problems that I need to overcome to get to where I want to be is key to female founders.
yeah,
Another one, statistics, and again, we can argue whether what is a cause or a correlation, is that the BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, they found that for every dollar spent or invested in female founders, the return was 75 cents on every dollar.
Yeah. Yeah.
For male, it was 35 cents on every dollar.
Yes.
So it makes sense to invest in women founders for angels or VCs out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely sold on the idea. I think women just, I'd massively generalize, but they are often more empathic to what customers want. We'll sit and listen to what customers want rather than just kind of drive the product agenda.
Yeah, and the second reason for startup failure is the lack of product market fit. So you have a product that nobody wants, and you can de-risk that by talking to your customers, by involving them early and often during your product development cycle. So it makes sense to get that done and focus to have a problem first, customer-centric problem solutions. This way, you're developing things that people want and not something that they don't want to either buy or change their behavior to adopt.
I think there is a kind of, it might be called confirmation bias, or I mean, there's a whole raft of unconscious biases and sometimes actual prejudices that male investors feel towards female founders. But one thing is, in the last 20 years, if you were asked to name very prominent entrepreneurs, Bezos and so on, they'd all be male. And I've heard, and I might have mentioned this in my book. If he looks and sounds like Zuckerberg, I'll invest in him. And there's that just kind of bias about, you think this is what success looks like, and it's a male, despite, growing evidence that female founders are going to do as well, if not better than many male founders.
And the average age for successful founders and entrepreneurs is in the mid 40s.
Yeah.
Not what we see, the outliers that are out there, such as you mentioned, the Zuckerberg. Those are exceptions and not representative for the diversity of the founders and entrepreneurs out there. So, Phil, talking about the book. Phil, for the audience, is the author of an awesome book called AngelThink. This way, AngelThink. It is the book. Let me put you in the spotlight. Here. Hold on. You can bring that book back again so people can see it. And you can. I personally read the book. It has about 150 golden nuggets.
Yes.
Right. You get inside the mind of an angel. And you see through.
You can see, I'm just opening any page at random, an insight, another insight, another insight. So there's there's about one a page. It's about 150 pages long. It's it says something I've drawn from my experience, my wisdom in the first part, and then there's a little bit that says you should consider doing more of this or less of this as a result of this insight.
Do you want to take a snippet and read just to give the audience a flavor of your book?
Oh my God, I wouldn't know where to begin.
No pressure.
Let me.
I'm gonna put. You can.
I've got. Yeah.
I'm gonna put it in the
I've got
banner
one here that says. This is snippet or insight 36. Founders, the most important post yet. Remember the story you're telling. A pitch deck has to have a narrative arc. You've identified a group of people with a significant problem. You have a solution, ideally novel or disruptive in some way. You clearly know who they are, their lifestyle or behaviors or the businesses you target. and what your solution will change for them.
Mhm.
You know that there are a lot of them, a large addressable market. You can evidence that with market research. You can supply your solution profitably. You have a genuine passion for doing that, and you've got a great team around you, and you'll make us all a good return. Try to tell me that story imaginatively in a gripping way. Inject some passion. Make it more compelling than a carpet catalogue. Then we'll all live happily ever after.
I love it. I love it. And all of those, like, golden nuggets, but with a twist of humor in them. And
Yeah,
that's why I think it's a very easy read, and it touches so many touch points across your journey as, a founder or an entrepreneur, that you
yeah,
can go back. It's not a heavy reading,
no,
yet it's full of wisdom. And I love that. So anybody who'd like that book by Phil, you can find it. It's called AngelThink by Phil. You can find it on Amazon,
yeah,
and you'll thank me later. And you can also gift it to any budding entrepreneur, someone interested in
yeah.
raising money.
I wrote a post in about mid-December,
Hmm.
and this was aimed at the Christmas market, and it said it was aimed at on LinkedIn. It was aimed at the relations of founders, not founders themselves.
Hmm.
Which said, if you want to get rid of your founder for 3 or 4 hours on Boxing Day, then buy them AngelThink because you'll have perfect peace.
That is so true. It's been my companion for my reading time. And it's not just you read it once, you go back to it because it's so memorable.
Yeah,
So highly recommended. Recommend it. So
thank you.
you're welcome. When it comes to, let's say, we've touched a little bit from your snippet about, tell me a story that's compelling and so on. Can you elaborate on the importance of storytelling in pitching and raising money for
Yeah.
founders?
Can I tell you a story
Sure, I love
that
that.
might demonstrate this? So I I wrote something that was published on a website called, I think it's called Maddiness,
Okay.
a little while ago,
Hmm.
and it's about mindset, and it's about having the importance of entrepreneurs having the right mindset.
Hmm.
And the story is called "How Two Egyptologists Explained the Entrepreneur's Mindset to Me," and it's set about 100 years ago. And there are two Egyptologists called George and Henry, and they're stumbling about in the desert with a faded old map looking for undiscovered pyramids. And a rich sultan rides up on a really impressive white stallion with his entourage, and he asks them what they're doing. And they say, "We're Egyptologists. We're looking for a pharaoh's tomb like the ones that have been discovered nearby recently. We want to tell the country's history." "Ah, no," says the Sultan, "you're just robbers. You've come here to plunder our country and steal our treasures to put them in your fusty old museums. We'll end up with nothing. I won't have it. Hang them." So he sentences them to death there and then. So George whispers to Henry, "We don't have long, about as long as it takes to find a tree." "Your Eminence," George says to the Sultan, I know how much you love your stallions. May I propose an idea?
Hmm.
In return for our lives, we will teach your favorite horse to fly." The Sultan considers the proposal, and fancying himself as the rider of the only flying horse in the world, he says, interesting. What would you need?" So Henry looks at George in disbelief. "You know horses don't fly. What made you come up with a crazy idea like that? You're only postponing the inevitable. Your Eminence, your horse is the finest example I've ever seen. It will be a challenge, of course, but I think we can do it in a year. George addresses the Sultan. We'll need a private stable so no one can spy on our methods. And of course, food and shelter. I will send you a monthly report on our progress. Very well. And if you fail, I will cut your tongues out first, says the Sultan, and then he rides off. Henry, Henry, we have a chance, man, George says. Take the Sultan first. He might lose interest in the idea, or we could distract him. You could get your uncle to send him a Bentley, or he might die. And then there's the horse. The horse might convince the Sultan that he doesn't want to fly, or the horse might fall ill and die. And lastly, there's us. We might escape, we might die, or we might actually find a way to teach the horse to fly. Come on. George, you're right, of course, replies Henry. We mustn't give in now. We have a year. Let's get to work. So then I'm just trying to show you in a story what a positive mindset that an entrepreneur needs to have.
Yeah, so it's key. I think entrepreneurs by default, they are optimistic. They look at the bright side, the possibilities. How they can change the world. Many times when others can't see it yet, and they will have a lot of no's.
They're optimistic. They have belief in themselves, and they have courage. They're willing to make big bets on things.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that story and how it showcased like the positivity among those two. Did they survive? Did they make the horse fly?
They must have been able to tell the story to someone else.
Yeah, they're at least, they're like, in terms of, let's say, what makes great founder investor relationships for the long run in mind?
Yeah.
We've touched on a few of them, but if we put it together.
I think it's I mean, I could say that there are a few founders that although I have a business relationship with them, as an advisor, I actually love them. I love them as people, and I support them as best I can, and I have an empathy for what it is they're going through. And I was on a call with a couple this morning, and one of them was saying, I'm really flagging. I don't feel very well. I haven't got any energy, and you listen, and you bring something, that might help them, might lift them. And I think what I would say is possibly what contributes to me being quite good at this is because I trained as a nurse. I'm going back a long time, 30 odd years ago, but 40 years ago. But I really got into an understanding of what empathy was, and how you need to be able to show empathy for the people that you're working with. And a founder's life is tough. I'm not there to give them any sympathy. It's what they chose. Some of them went into it blind, whatever, but there they are. But at least being empathic and understanding and appreciating what they're going through, and sometimes just being able to help them with listening, or a good idea, or a technique, or an insight, is I think what works for many of them.
Mhm.
And what they appreciate, I think, is just having the opportunity to talk to someone in a kind of off limits way, that many of them talk to me in a way that they wouldn't talk to all investors, because they
Mhm.
don't want to frighten the horses sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And when it comes to, you know, fundraising, so because approaching angels, it's with that, fundraising, bringing their expertise to your sphere and so on. What are your top three advice for? We are about to wrap up. I can't believe it's already an hour gone. What is your top three advice for founders or entrepreneurs or business leaders when it comes to fundraising from angels?
Yeah. Um, don't be impatient.
Mm-hmm.
There generally is no reason to rush in or have a fear that somebody's breathing down your neck, inventing this idea that you have to get to market first, before next Monday because someone else is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just work out, so many things, convince yourself that there is a market there, that people will pay for it, that it's what people want, etc. And because you have to be able to convince investors that that's what they should invest in.
Yep.
You have to understand what it is that investors are looking for as well. And, there's this presumption that when you go to pitch, you do it in the traditional way. You start with all these customer problems and a solution and a value proposition and all of that, and how it's going to make money. But I sometimes say to founders, well, that's you've solved a customer's problem. What do you
It's
think
more,
my problem is?
yeah,
What is it you're offering me?
a return on investment.
You know, what do you think I'm looking for? What's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
It's return on investment. It's a
Mm-hmm.
promise of exit.
Yeah,
It's a willingness to have a relationship with me, to
yeah.
work with me, or let us work together on solving a problem,
Mm-hmm.
over a long period of time. So yeah, I don't know if I've said three, but that those would be my,
Your top.
and I suppose the other thing is just acknowledging that. I often talk about exceptional entrepreneurs.
What makes an exceptional entrepreneur?
Yeah,
My,
there's a good
my
question.
curiosity.
Yeah, there's a good question. That if 60, maybe 90% of founders are going to fail in the
Mm-hmm.
first 5 years, 60%
Yeah.
in 3 years is a figure that's quite often bandied about, 90% in 5 years, then what is it about the ones that are going to survive and thrive
Mm-hmm.
beyond 5 years? Because you're investing a proportion of money you're trying to back a winner.
Mm-hmm.
So as a founder, your job almost
Yeah.
is to become a winner.
Yeah. To deal
You know?
with. Yeah. The business.
And it's not as though you're a horse in someone else's stable and they're going to take you out and give you all the right supplements and make you as fit as
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You have to do
Yeah.
it for yourself. You have to work out what your own growth needs are,
Mm-hmm.
what your inner work requirement is to be the person that is going to thrive, in
Uh-huh.
10 years time.
Yeah.
I've got
Is your computer
I've got to
battery low?
yeah, I've got to plug power in. Hang on.
Sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, while you do that for the audience, We're talking to Phil McSweeney, and he's sharing his insights about how do angel investors approach funding certain founders. And we're trying to get to their point of view, their angle on how they assess both the founders, their teams, and their startups, and what makes some founders backable versus not for others. And any last minute wrap up that you would like to share with the audience that I haven't asked you about, Phil?
Me? Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for entrepreneurs to connect with me. I'm obviously delighted if they run out and buy my book. I'm working on. I'm possibly working on another book. I'm still in two minds about it.
What is it about?
It has a working title called. I use a swear word now. Why the fuck can't I raise investment? So it will explore all of the reasons why you might not be able to raise investment and what you need to do about them. And I'm writing kind of a bit chapter by chapter, and I'm publishing some of the chapters as articles on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me, then you'll see it article by article over the next probably year. You know, it might be an article every couple of weeks or so. And I'm not looking to actively invest at the moment because I'm fully invested. In the new tax year, that would be a possibility. I do offer a kind of short service to people, which is a kind of fundraising readiness audit. So if that would be the kind of thing that people would be interested in, then I'd happily do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Phil. And for the audience, if you are into innovation and how to leverage that for business growth, you can check out my free blueprint for business leaders. You can find it on my featured section on LinkedIn. And it gives you how to hone in on your target customer, how to make differentiation between your business and your competition, how to segment, and so on. So it has so many tools that can help you stand out and give you some sort of blueprint as a business leader using AI, generative AI. And with that, thank you so much, Phil, for your time, for your insights. And
you're more than welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.